Hey guys, and welcome to the third episode of the crafting tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to start off doing just kind of a bunch of miscellaneous tasks, kind of finishing some stuff up from last time, and then setting up some of the basic client side of this crafting system so we can open and close it. That's probably about as far as we're going to get in this episode. But anyway, let's get right into it. So the first thing we're going to want to do is, I forgot to do this in the first episode when I made the UI. Go to the starter UI, go to the screen UI for crafting, and make sure you turn off reset on spawn, because otherwise it'll break the whole system when you restart, or like when you reset, when you die and respawn and whatnot. Because the script is set to run in starter player scripts, right? But the starter player scripts doesn't, like if you had it in starter character scripts, it would restart when you die and you respawn. But in starter player scripts, it puts the scripts in the player rather than the character, and so it doesn't restart when you die. Anyway, and then the next thing, I'm gonna make these invisible just so I can see. So if you just click on both of these and toggle off visible, and then so now I can see a little bit better. I'm gonna close all these scripts for now. We'll open some of them a little bit later. And then another thing, in the last episode, I mentioned these modules up here. So we have replicated storage modules. I mentioned the janitor and signal, but I forgot to actually show you how to import those for people who haven't imported modules from a script or from a file before. So once you've downloaded them, which I'll add the link in the description of this video as well. I did in the last video as well. But you can right click where you want to put them, then do insert from file, and then navigate to whatever thing you want to insert. And they are RBXM, which is like Roblox model. That's the file type. So you can insert them like that. And just like that, you can insert each one of them. I already have them inserted, so I'm just going to delete those. But that's how you do that. So now we're going to get into the client script. Actually, before we get into that first, actually. So I set up these example tools, right? And they work with the inventory system. They don't have any, but the problem here is that they don't have any images. And this should also work with the default backpack, because if you just touch them, it should let you pick them up. But I'm going to add some images to these real quick, because I actually do have some images. I kind of just forgot to add them. So I'm going to do that real quick. Let's see. So to do that, I'm going to go to server storage, all items. Okay, there we go. So now I have all the images set up. And these images I made kind of in a silly way. Basically all I did, just in case you wanted to, do the same, is I made a little green screen sort of a thing. So you just and then you could take these, anchor them, turn off cast shadow, make them green, throw an item on it, and you take a picture, like a screenshot or something, right? And then you can just use an image editor to cut out the background. It's really, it's not really like a professional way of making an image. I just kind of did that because it was easy. Anyway, so I made the images for those. And so now all our tools are finally completely set up now. So now let's go into the local script. Let's go over to, we already created all the scripts that we'll need. So it's going to be in the starter player scripts, client, crafting client. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to go up here. I'm going to add that strict keyword that I talked about in the last episode. So that way everything in this script has to strictly match the type definitions. I'm just going to define a bunch of variables that we'll need just to get us started. I'll find a lot of these as I go, but for now what we'll need is players. Let's see. Game service. Oh my gosh. Game get service. Oh, I have a weird keyboard. That's what's going on. Okay. I was like, is that not the right? Okay, anyway. So game get service players. We're also gonna need, that's all we need. Actually, we will need replicated storage. That's all we need for right now. We're gonna need more later. And we're gonna need some modules. I'm gonna define types. Modules.types. Local signal, local janitor, local crafting recipes, and that's crafting recipes is one we made in the last episode as well, in the information folder. And then that'll be all for now. Then we're going to do some player variables. This is where we're going to get the player GUI. So local player equals, okay, well I was trying to autocomplete that. Players.local player GUI equals player GUI. And if you're not sure what that is, basically it's where the GUI is actually stored when you're playing the game. Because everything, whenever you start the game, everything from starter GUI is copied over into player GUI. So that's where we need to actually access the GUI rather than in starter GUI. So now we're going to make variables for a bunch of the GUI objects. So let's have that for reference real quick. Variables, GUI, wait for child. We're going to do wait for childs on all of these just because sometimes the scripts load before the GUI fully does. So that's going to be the screen GUI right here. It's going to be directly inside player GUI. Then local craft, or actually local open button. GUI with child open, so that's just this button right here. We'll drag item button. And this one's going to be, I don't think we created this yet actually. Okay, so let's do that real quick. So basically what this is going to be, let me just make this visible again. How we're going to like move items into the crafting table in this system is going to be through a drag and drop, because I had a lot of people requesting tutorials for drag and drop in the inventory system, but I never got around to that. So I figured I'd do that with the crafting system just to show you how it might work. So anyway, so in order to do the drag and drop how I'm doing it, I mean there's other ways to do it. I think Roblox is working on a new system that'll make it easier, but I remember running into some bugs with that, so I didn't end up using that. But we're going to create a new text button. We might be able to copy not those, the item sample here, because that's what we want it to look like. So paste it into the screen GUI, rename it to drag item, and I think all the things inside of it are fine because we don't need the item count. Get rid of that. And then the size, we're going to want to change that a little bit. So the UI aspect ratio is going to keep it a square, but we want it to be, we want the size to be in scale rather than an offset. So that way it's based on a proportion of the full screen size. And so that's a decent size right there, 0.1. And I think that's everything for this. And all we need to do now is just select this and then make it invisible. Right here. Turn visible off. So that way it's not like, it only shows. So basically what we're going to use this for, right? When you click on this item and you start to drag it, we want to show the item under your mouse as you're dragging it. And so we're going to use this, which isn't like inside of anything, so that's not going to mess with the positioning. We're going to use that and just constantly reposition it at the mouse's position to show it like following the mouse as if like, you know, you're dragging it, right? And then we're going to figure out where the mouse lets go, like where the mouse is located when you let go of the button, and use that to figure out which slot it goes into. But we'll get into that later. But we do need to have this button in order to actually display that. So that's going to be GUI child, drag item, and then yeah, I'll just leave it like that, I guess. Actually, I will do a drag item b.visible equals false. That way, if you forget to turn it invisible when you're like editing it or something, then it'll do it for you when you start the game. Local error. Did I add the error text? I did not add the error text. We are going to need an error text as well. We did the same thing in an inventory system. Ideally in a game, you'd want to have a separate system for error messages, like have like your own screen GUI that just has the error text and nothing else, and then you have like one script that you can just, you know, run a function from other scripts and it'll do various different error messages. But just for the sake of this tutorial, then I'm going to put it as part of the crafting system. But it's going to be basically made the exact same as the inventory system one. So we're going to want to make a little error message just kind of like that one. Text label. We'll rename this to error. And then the anchor point, I'm going to do 0.50. So that way it's in the top middle. position 0.5, 0.2. I need to be a little bit higher than that. There we go. And then size can be pretty wide, pretty short. Might move it up a little bit more. There we go. That should be good. Background transparency 1. Font is going to be for Delta 1. Text scaled on true. Or you can't do that. I don't know. Some random sample message. It won't show that in the game. We'll specify the message when the error actually comes. Text color, I'm going to do red. I'm going to add a text stroke by removing the transparency. Make it white. And then this is a bit big, so I'm going to shrink it down so it makes the text smaller. And there is our error message text. So we're going to take that, we're going to make that invisible as well. Okay, then we're going to define that as a variable. UI, child, oh, whoa. Child, error key dot. Visible to false, doing the same thing as we did before. Just setting it to false in case you forgot to like, or these are supposed to be true. Or no, yeah, no, these are supposed to be false, never mind. So just setting it to be invisible in case you forgot to when you're editing the UI. Local crafting F, so we're going to define this frame right here equals UI child crafting F dot. And we're doing the same thing as before, right? We want all these to be invisible by default. So this is just a habit I got into. Just always adding these on anything you want to, that you're going to be toggling the visibility of that you want to be invisible by default. Just so you know, in case you're ever editing the UI and you forget to change it. Like the child table. So now we're defining variables for things inside of here. So the table. Alright, so local clear button. This is going to be for clearing the table. F, like the child. Clear local craft button. Crafting. Child. Craft. And then now we're going to go and do another section for things inside of, I guess, inside of these. So this is the result. This is where it's going to display the thing that like if you match a recipe that exists, it's going to display the item here, right? So result frame, we go to crafting F, like child, result, local item container, and that is within here where it actually displays the item. Go to result F dot item, let's child item container, local result image is equal to item container, like a child image label, local result name key equals result F, there's the child item name. So then we'll be able to edit the image and edit the name text of this whenever we switch what item is currently being crafted. Okay. And then 3 more variables here. We're going to do local. We're going to do this. These are going to be for the inventory side of things. So if we minimize all this, it's going to be all the things over here that we need to look at. Child. And normally when I'm creating these scripts, I don't define these right from the start. Or I define the ones I think I'm going to need, but a lot of times I end up missing some and then defining them later. But since I've already made this system, I'm just defining everything we'll be needing right now, so we don't have to worry about it. But yeah, inventory. We're going to do the same thing here, and visible as false, so that way it starts off as invisible. And this is just the inventory half of the GUI. So item SF, for child, item scrolling frame, local item sample, missed an S there. It's supposed to be items SF, item scrolling frame. Local, or wait for child sample. files. Okay, that's all the UI we're going to be needing to work with. So we're going to do, the next thing we're going to move on to is setting up the open closing code for this. I'm going to make these invisible again, just so they're not in the way while I'm looking around and stuff. But we're going to set up the open and closing code for these, or for this whole thing. So let's see. So let's just start by creating these, defining the function. So I have the start function. The start function is already being ran right here. So this will be ran right at the start of the game, right when the player joins and, you know, loads into the game. We're gonna connect a few things. So we're gonna do connecting buttons. So we want to look at all the buttons that we want to open and close the inventory, or not the inventory, the crafting system. So we want this to open and close depending on where it's currently at. And do we have a close button? I don't remember. We do not. So we just need this button. So we're gonna do this open button right here. So open b dot mouse button one click connect function, and then we're gonna go down here. We're gonna create a new function. Setting window open function crafting client set window open set boolean. So this is going to be a multi-purpose function for both opening and closing, and this is going to determine this boolean right here. Boolean is going to determine whether you open or you close. So we're going to say there's a few things we're going to need some variables here. So I'm going to make a new section right here. Private variables, and private is just saying like it's kind of I'm comparing it to like Unity development, in that like if you're using modules like I am here, if I were to put something in here like inside the module table, right, then technically this isn't considered a variable. Like this is just a value. This is a key value pair, so this is the key, this is the value inside of a table. But you can think about it kind of like a variable, right? And it's a variable specific to this module, but it's a variable that can be accessed from other things that require this module. So if you require this module, you get access to this table and you can find this something value, right? So this is kind of like a public variable in other programming languages. And so then if you have just like, you know, local something equals true, this is kind of like a private variable that can't be accessed outside of this module. So sometimes I'll call these, I'll like make a section for private variables. These are also all the same as this, but this is just like more generic. It's kind of like a miscellaneous category that I use, but anyway. So we're gonna need debounce, so that way you can't like try and close the inventory while it's still opening, or open it while it's still closing and have it break things. And then we're gonna go down here, crafting client.open is false. So this is going to track whether or not it's currently open. This is going to track whether or not it's in the process of being opened or being closed, and we don't want to like have it try and open while it's closing or something like that, right? So then in this function, we're going to do, let's define this function first, and then I'll move to using this. We're going to, inside this, we're going to connect it to this function. So that way whenever you press this button, it'll run this function. But let's see, so if debounce, then return n. So what this is going to say is if this variable is true, which it's not, then it's going to not run this function, right? So then we're going to do if toSet and not crafting client.open, then else if toSet, or else if not toSet and crafting client.open, then. Okay. So this is going to be crafting closed, trying to open, right? This is going to be crafting open, trying to close. And the reason we have both of these, because I mean, I could just have the if toSet and if not toSet, but the reason I have both of these is because I don't want it to try opening if it's already open, right? I just want to ignore that input if that's the case. So then in both of these, we're going to do debounce equals true, cleaning up vBounce equals false. Try to copy paste these. And we're gonna have more stuff here as well. So when we're opening, we're gonna create some variables, some more variables. Yay! These ones are going to be constants. So I'm going to move this. I'm going to do another section up here, constants. And again, this is mostly references to other programming languages. Lua doesn't really define constants as any different from other variables. But there's some languages, some programming languages that define constants as basically a variable that can't be changed after it's been defined. And so it's sort of like a reference variable, like read only, sort of, right? And they're usually written in all caps like this. That's just, the standard way of doing it. So we're going to create a new variable, inventory open position, for where we want the inventory to be when it's open. And we're just going to have that set to wherever it currently is. So you can just, customize where you want it to be, and then that will be the open position. And then you just, turn it invisible to not see it, right? So it's not in the way. Then the inventory close position, we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to add udiam2 from scale 0, 1. And so this is going to be, so since we're doing from scale, then it's going to be 0% of the x-axis and 100% of the y-axis. So it's going to move, and remember, positive y is down, and when it comes to UI, right? So this is going to take the current position of the inventory at the start of the game, right? So the open position, and it's going to move it down one full screen, right? So that's going to be off the screen. Local craft open position. We're going to do the same thing for the crafting part, right? Because we have these two frames, both of these. We have two frames instead of just one, so we're going to have to define variables for both of them. F.position, local craft close position, F.position plus udiam2.scale 0, 1. The same thing. And if you wanted it to go from like the top, then you could do -1. If you wanted it to come from the right, you could do on the x-axis, or you could do however you want to. You don't have to do from the bottom like I am, but that makes the most sense to me, so I'm doing that. So when we're opening, this is going to be when we're opening the crafting menus, right? We're going to set both of the positions of both of the frames to be the closed positions, just kind of as a safety measure. Because if it's like when you start the game, right, it's already in the open position. So if you make it visible, it's already going to be in the open position. And then if you try tweening it to the open position, it's not going to move anywhere because it's already there. So it's not really going to work the first time until you close it and then it tweens it away. So we're actually going to move it to in closed position and then set inv visible equals true. So that way, we always make sure that when we're opening it, it's going to start in the closed position before it then slides up into the open position. So then we're going to do the same thing with crafting. Craft closed position. Crafting visible true. And if you're not familiar with like the whole semicolons, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the semicolons is just a way to write two statements in one line. It's just kind of a syntax thing. It doesn't change how it functions. So this is the same as doing that, but it just makes it nice to organize it. Let's see. So then we're going to do, then now we want to tween. So this is going to set it to the open position or to the closed position, and then it's going to make them visible. So now we just want to tween both of these frames into the open positions. So tweening is just like making a property of an object gradually shift over time. So in the case of user interface, it's just going to be, the UI is going to slide up, right? Rather than just teleporting, it's going to slide. So I'll give it a second for that tweening open. And for this, we're going to need some tween infos, which are a type of object. I'm going to define those as constant variables as well. Just so that, because the thing that's nice about these constants is it's easy to just come in here and like edit this whenever, and it'll work with the rest of the system. And they pop out because they're all caps, right? So they're easy to see. So we're going to create a new tween info called tween info out, and we're going to do the time for how long it will take to tween as 1/2 of a second, and we're going to do enum.usingStyle I usually like to do quart. Quart's pretty nice. And then enum.easing direction.out. And then I'm gonna find that quick. I'm gonna create, actually I'll create the other variable first. So then we'll do tween info in enum.easing style.quart and then enum.easing direction.in, right? And so what the difference between these two is going to be is essentially, is the inventory opening or is it closing? Because it's not going to be like linear, because quart is the easing style, right? We could do linear, right? And in that case, the easing direction doesn't matter. And both of these would be the same. But since we're doing quart, then it's going to like, I think it starts slow, or it starts fast and slows down at the end. So it kind of looks more smooth, right? But for the out versus in, if you do out, it's going to start slow or start fast and then slow down. If you do in, it's going to start fast and then, or it's going to start slow and then speed up, but in the same mathematical pattern as it would, or on this one, right? And there's a graphic that helps with understanding this. Let me see if I can find it. All right, so here we go. So this right here is a nice little graphic for understanding all the different styles. So the name is like which like easing style it is, and then it kind of, I think it's going back and forth between in and out. I'm not entirely sure. There's like, I don't know what, I guess the color is determining whether it's in, out, or I think there's also like in, out, and out, in, or I don't know. But this is like the mathematical graphs for how it looks. So linear is just a straight line from this, like the starting position to the ending position. Sine, it like starts slow and speeds up. Quad, cubic, quart, quint, exponential, you know. And there's other fancy ones like back, where it kind of goes down a little bit. And if you do back out, because I think these are all the in variations. If you do back out, it kind of like goes, it like overshoots and then comes back. It's kind of nice. Anyway, but yeah. So those are the easing styles, easing directions. This is what I'm going to set mine as. You can experiment with these and, you know, modify them as you want. Kind of have fun with them. But now, so we're going to actually go and tween them now. So we're going to go down to this function again. So we're going to create two tweens, which a tween is a type of object. We're going to need tween service for that. So let's go up to the top, local ps, name get service, tween service. There is like env tween position, tween size position, but I think those are deprecated now in favor of using just tween service. And those only apply to GUI objects anyway. You can use tweens on other things like parts and whatnot as well. So tween service is the more general option that has the same functionality as tween size, tween position, etc. So we create a new variable and we're going to set it equal to ts create. So that's going to create a new tween. And then what we want to specify is the object we want to tween. So in this case, we're going to do inventory frame. And then the tween info, which is what we created up here, right? Tween info out. Up there, we created the constant variables. And then the properties that we want to change, which we define as a table. So for this tween, we want it to make the inventory slide from where it currently is, which is the inventory close position, to the, so we can set position, we want the position to change to inventory open position. And that's all we want to change. You can change multiple things at a time, so you do like background transparency. But I don't want to do that here. But yeah, so you can change multiple things at the same time. This tween won't actually do anything until you do in between play. But anyway, so we're gonna create another tween for the crafting side. We're gonna basically the same thing, but with the crafting instead of the inventory, right? So those are the two tweens. And then we're going to play them both, just one right after the other. But when you play these, it's not going to wait for them to complete before like moving on to the next line of code. So it's going to start the inventory tween, and then while the inventory tween is still going, it's going to immediately start the crafting tween. So it's not going to tween the inventory side, and then after the inventory is complete, then do this, and it's going to do them both at the same time. And then, but that also means that we need to actually wait for the tweens to complete. So we're going to be waiting for completion, tween completed, wait. And so here, I'm only doing tween.complete. I could also do craft_tween.completed. Completed is an event that runs whenever the tween finishes, right? Whenever it reaches the target position, right? But the reason I'm only waiting for one of these is because they both have the same duration. They both have the ½ second duration. They're both using tween info out, and they both have the same direction, right? Or the same duration. And so if I wait for one tween to complete, then the other one's most likely going to be complete by that time anyway. I could also do like task.wait 0.5 and just wait for that amount of time. But I would rather do this because then if I want to modify the amount of time they take, then it'll update this automatically. And yeah, okay, so that's going to wait for the tweens to complete. And then after that, in our cleaning up section, we're going to destroy these tweens just to save on memory and whatnot, right? I'm not sure if you really need to destroy them or not, or if it kind of like, if the garbage collector will get rid of them, which it might, but just to be safe, we can destroy them. Crafting client.open. And at this point, the crafting menu is officially open, so we're going to set this value up here to true, which is going to trigger how these work, right? And so now the closing portion is going to be basically the same. We can run this right now, and I think it'll open, but you won't be able to close it again. Maybe not. Oh, I did forget one thing, I believe. Maybe. Oh, I never actually connected the function. That's right. That'll do it. Okay, so when the open button is pressed, then we're going to do crafting client.setWindowOpen, and we're going to do not crafting client.open. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, this is going to be moved, like provided as an argument into this function. And what it's going to do is it's going to take crafting client.open, which is a Boolean value, right? So like, you know, from the right at the beginning, it's going to be false. And so not false would be true, right? Or not true would be false. So this is just going to be the opposite of whatever this is. So it's just going to run set window open, basically toggling it to whatever it isn't currently, right? So that'll do that for us. But now we can't close it because we didn't set up the closing code yet, but it does work to open it. So now we're going to set up a closing code, which is going to be mostly the same. So we set the debounce to true, debounce to false. We're going to do tween closed. Local inventory tween equals ts create inventory frame tween info in this time rather than out. Position equals inventory closed position rather than open position. Craft tween crafting frame tween info in, and then position craft close position, and then so I have both of those tweens, and those tweens are going to close it rather than open it. Inventory tween play craft tween play, and then this one's going to have one extra step at the end, so we're going to wait for the completion, and then after that we're going to hide it. We're going to set it back to be invisible again, just to be safe. It'll be off the screen anyway, but it doesn't hurt to have it invisible as well. Inv.visible equals false, because we're also setting it to be visible again up here as well, right? And crafting f.visible is false. So it's going to wait for the tweens complete, and it's going to make them both invisible. And then, also another thing, I forgot to mention this earlier, if you were to do the not completed wait on both of them, this is probably a bad idea, because by the time this event runs and completes, then this tween likely is also already completed, but it's not going to connect to the completed event here of this tween until this runs. And so essentially it's not going to connect to this until this is already run, most likely. I mean, it might if you're lucky, but so you don't want to wait for both of them. So that's why I'm only waiting for one of them, because it doesn't work to wait for both of them. But anyway, just wanted to make that disclaimer real quick. So then for the cleanup portion, we're going to do inventory clean. We're going to destroy that, and then craft clean, destroy that. Again, I'm not sure if this is necessary or not, but it doesn't hurt at the very least. Crafting client dot open equals false, because at this point we've officially closed the crafting menu. So now it should work to open and close. And if I spam it, it's not going to like break anything because we have the debound set up, right? But it works with open and close. You will notice there's like a bit of a weird overlapping issue where the button's like overlapping the UI when it goes through. There is a pretty easy fix for that. Which is basically just this Z index property, which we can set it to a higher number than 1, because these are all set to 1 by default, right? So if I set it to 10, then now you can see the menu goes over the button rather than under it. But do note that that is relative to siblings, so like things that are in the same location, unless you change the Z-index behavior of the screen UI to be global instead of sibling. Anyway. Okay, so I think, yeah, that's everything for the opening and closing. Okay, so I think I'm going to end this episode here just to make sure it doesn't get too long. Try not to make my videos as long as I have for like the inventory system. Anyway, in the next episode, we're going to probably set up the display of the items. So it's essentially going to be kind of like the inventory system tutorial. We're going to display all the items here in this inventory side, so that way we can actually see them to be able to drag them into the crafting side. If you were to make the inventory and the crafting as one system, you'd probably just want to make one UI set for both, for like the whole thing. But since I'm doing this as two separate tutorial series, then I'm doing it like this. But yeah, that's just kind of a disclaimer there. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like access to the tutorial files for this tutorial and for other tutorial videos I've done, then you can get access to those files with the $299 a month membership on both YouTube or Patreon. With the higher tier membership, you can also gain access to one-on-one tutoring with me, where I can help you work on whatever you want to work on. I can teach you whatever you want to learn. I can have a structured lesson with you, or I can just, help you figure out how to make a certain system you're trying to figure out, right? Whatever it is that you want. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.